Hey everyone, it is Ed Gutowski. What I wanted to do was to create a welcome video, kind of just to introduce you to class, talk about the textbooks, and maybe talk a little bit about the expectations for class. Hey, I'm really excited for our class. I think English 1C is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to talk about rhetoric and argument, and we'll get kind of into the rhetoric and argument part of the class around week 2. But the rhetoric and argument part is always loads of fun. Students love the rhetoric and aspect part of class. So I just wanted to kind of introduce myself and then kind of give you a visual of who I am as an instructor, because I don't want, even though we're all online, I don't want our class to feel kind of impersonal. I really want you to know you're part of class and get to know a little bit about you as a student, as well as a person. So let me talk about the books that are required for class. And the first book that we're going to read is a book called Into the Wild. And Into the Wild is a book that I've used. I've used it both for my on-ground class and online class with a lot of success. Students can really gravitate towards the ideas in the books. There's a lot of interesting things that happen within the book that we can relate directly to arguments. And I think in many ways, Into the Wild sort of relates to the student experience, because the main character in the book, I think sometimes is in a situation that I find many of my students are in. The main character is going to school at a really prestigious university, and he has kind of these big lingering questions. Why am I going to college? What do I want out of my life? What do I want to do with my life? And I think a lot of my students have these questions. And this student does something that's really bizarre. What he does is, after he graduates, he gets rid of all of his money, gets rid of all of his possessions, and disappears into the wilderness, and no one knows really what happened to him. And 6 months later, he walks into Alaska with a pistol, 10 pounds of rice, and tries to live off the land and ends up dying of starvation. And John Krakauer, the author, wants to know what would motivate a kid who had everything going for him, coming from a well-to-do family, really educated, and a pretty successful, why he would go off and do something so rash. And the level of arguments that come out of this book are really fun and engaging for students. So Into the Wild is the second book, the first book we're going to look at, and then the second book we're going to look at is a book by Jack London called Martin. It's called Martin Eden. This is the book here. I have really become really interested in Jack London over the last course of years. 100 years ago, Jack London was perhaps the most read, if not famous, author in the world. And so I wanted to go look at what's considered to be kind of one of his famous, most longer works. So we'll get into that book a little bit later. The textbook we're going to use is called Everything's an Argument. I've used this book quite often. It's a really good textbook to use. It'll help us to understand how rhetoric and argument work. It kind of introduces us to some of those key concepts. So that's our textbook. We're also going to use the Siegel Reader Essays. This book has a bunch of essays that we're going to read throughout the semester. A lot of the essays are really interesting. This one textbook actually has been voted by students perhaps the best textbook in our class. Most of them really like the stories. They're interesting. They can tell us a lot about rhetoric and argument. And then we're going to end with the Shakespeare play, Henry V. Henry V, I can only just say things as it's really epic. Henry V is about, it's about war, it's about politics, and it's about rhetoric. And I was kind of forced to teach Henry V online last spring when we were online. Students really liked it. I just kept on with that lesson plan and keep building on it. It's pretty accessible for students, and students really kind of just generally liked it, so I wanted to keep using it. So I just wanted to get the sense of what are the textbooks we're going to use, some other thoughts about class. We're never going to meet directly on Zoom. I'll have my office hours set up. So if you want to meet with me, we can set up a Zoom meeting where we can meet. But, most of my lectures I'll either post online or everything will kind of be explained in the module section of Canvas. And just as a reminder, you have until February 1st to send me sort of a welcome and email, kind of introduce yourself to me. And that way I can know who's attending class and who's not attending class. And then I can start, drop students who really aren't taking the class. But hey, I'm really excited. I think English 1C is just, it's too much fun. You really can't screw up English 1C, even online. Our class is going to be a lot of fun. So if you have any questions, just send me an email. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing what your guys think of class.